The time has come.
I like that.
The time is now for Victoria Stilwell's Positively Podcast. She's a world-renowned dog trainer.
Seen enough dogs today, have you?
She's the host of It's Me or the Dog.
I'm coming to train you.
Along with co-host Holly Ferfer.
You don't play around with that name, do you?
I am a fan of sweaty balls.
She's Victoria Stillwell, and she's ready to go.
This is a lovely way to start the day.
You get the busy bee. I need to trim her whiskers.
I see some poo here.
I feel a little bit better now because I'm the only one who usually feels stupid during the podcast.
Now, let's head to the studio and get this Positively Podcast started.
I truly have the best people on this podcast.
You really
and
do.
Today, I do. I mean, of course, you and me, Holly.
Well, we're fantastic. That goes without saying, but the guests are even better than us, Vic.
They really are. Today we have Clive Wynne. Oh my gosh. If you came to my conference last year, which was the first time we had to make our conference virtual, it was of May 2020 because of the pandemic, and so we put it online. It's usually a conference that we do in the UK, but we put it online. We thought, okay, now we can have more speakers, and we got this amazing man called Clive Wynne to come in and talk, and he blew everybody's minds, and he's back. By popular demand, he's going to be another speaker at my conference, April the 16th to 18th, 2021, that is also virtual. But to the podcast today, we have our wonderful Clive Wynne, who's going to be talking about all things dog. Dog is Love, his new book, but also about dogs and wolves. I'm very excited for that. But Holly, how have you been? How has this week been treating you? Where have you traveled to?
I haven't traveled really anywhere yet, but it's on the list because I don't think I mentioned this, excuse me, but I got COVID for Christmas. So fortunately, so fortunate that it was very mild.
Thank goodness.
So now I have the antibodies. So I'm thinking I might have to travel before those antibodies wane, or I'm hoping that the antibodies will slide me into the vaccine. But I just was very, very lucky that it was very mild. So I am planning on taking a few trips now. I would love to see my mom, but she's immune compromised, and I'm being, still cautious with everything. And until she has the vaccine and I have the vaccine and the world has the vaccine, I won't risk it. But I will get on an airplane and go to the beach maybe. So I want you to get vaccinated so you can come with me.
Oh, how I would love to do that. Oh my gosh, how I miss that, how I miss doing that. But yeah, I'm very glad that you are feeling better. And I have a couple of friends that also have COVID right now. And one has had a really tough time of it, been in hospital, in and out of hospital, and is still in hospital as we speak. So we're going to be praying for him. And hopefully that he will make a recovery. He's certainly doing better today. So
that's good to hear, because that's why I'm actually have an appointment with the Red Cross later this week so that I can donate platelets for the antibodies. So because I think with people who are severe, they do a therapy with it. So if you didn't know that and you've had COVID, go get tested at the Red Cross to see if you can donate platelets with the antibodies, because they're desperately needed, especially now. So
absolutely. Well, thanks.
How have you been? How was your week? Good.
Yeah. Again, the whole thing. I traveled to my bedroom, and then I traveled upstairs to and then downstairs. Yeah, that's it. No, we've been doing a lot of rescue work still. I know that we were talking about doing rescue work beforehand and how the pandemic has. At the beginning of the pandemic, everybody was adopting dogs from the rescue shelters, and how wonderful that was. And a lot of people were fostering dogs as well. And now we're seeing people losing their homes, and more dogs are becoming homeless. And the pandemic puppies are now adolescents, and people are going, I don't want this adolescent in my home. I'm going to chuck it back. So we're seeing more and more of that in shelters, but I do a lot more rescue work right now. And I truly love doing that. It is my passion. It's where I come from. So that's something that I've been doing a lot. And the rescue dog is what we're going to be talking about today for at least part of the podcast, because that's what Clive Wynne is going to be talking about at our at my conference. So I want to welcome Clive Wynne to the podcast. He's a psychology professor who directs the Canine Science Collaboratory at Arizona State University, and also is the director of research at Wolf Park in Indiana. Welcome, Clive, to the podcast.
Victoria, it's so great to be with you. It's a real thrill, these small consolations in our pandemic isolation, that we can get together like this. Thank you so much for inviting me, and great to meet you, Holly.
So nice to meet you.
So you're going to be speaking at the conference. You're going to be speaking about how we can make life better in the shelter for dogs that find themselves there. Could you tell us a little bit of maybe what people that register for the conference can expect?
Sure. So I'm going to talk about the whole range of things that we have done over the years, my group and I, on trying to help dogs who, through no fault of their own, have found themselves in the difficult situation. I think it's the pointy end for dogs in our society if they end up in a shelter. These shelters, a lot of them, they were built in the 50s or 60s or even earlier, an epoch when it was taken for granted that if nobody came for the dog in 2 weeks, the dog was going to be euthanized. It was a different time. And so the facilities, by and large, they were built so that the animals would survive 14 days. That's all they were needed for. Now, though, times have changed. We don't like the idea of euthanizing healthy animals. And this is a wonderful thing. This is a great thing, right? That we've moved on from euthanizing millions of dogs every year to now euthanizing a tiny fraction of that number. But what that means is that these poor pooches are stuck in basic kennels, and they can be stuck there for weeks or for months. Or in some cases, I've come across dogs that have been in these kennels for years. And this is not right. We know that this is not how dogs are supposed to live. We know that the dogs under those circumstances are highly stressed and have all sorts of, this affects their health, their biological health, and of course it affects their behavior. The longer a dog spends in one of these kennels, the more difficult it is to convince somebody they should take this dog home. The dog has all sorts of unattractive behaviors to them. So over the years, we've done lots of different things to try and improve their lives while they're stuck there so that they're not so difficult to get adopted. And I've always thought, most crucially, to help them get out the door, because the only good outcome is to go home and become somebody's beloved companion in a human home. That's what we want for our dogs. So my goodness, the range of things, I feel a little bit overwhelmed myself. So we've done beautiful studies that I did some years ago now with Sasha Protopopova, who's now a professor at the University of British Columbia. And it's conceptually so simple. You just follow people around. Somebody comes to a shelter. They think they want a dog. And you follow them around with a video camera. And you see, what do they do? And most crucially, what does the dog do? Because there are all sorts of ideas. I had all sorts of theories, right? We were talking earlier about scooping the poop. I've always thought, that's one of the least attractive things that dogs regularly do, is that they, right? And you have to do something about it. So I always thought, I hope when the visitor comes who might be looking to adopt a dog, I hope when they bring the dog out of the kennel and they start playing with the dog, I hope the dog doesn't relieve himself, because I bet that's a turnoff. So this is what we did.
So let me ask you, Clive, what do you find? I think that's fascinating, following people. What do you find as the common denominator for people who end up adopting a dog? And what is it that turns them off about some dogs besides the poop?
Well, that's the thing, Holly. It turns out the poop doesn't matter. So we followed the people and their dogs around for as long as they wanted to hang out with the dog. And we got these video recordings, and we went through the video recordings frame by frame by frame, counting every darn thing the dogs did, everything the dogs did. And obviously they could do a lot of different things, but it turned out poop doesn't matter. People didn't seem to care. Only two things influence whether the dog gets adopted or not. And those two things made a very, very big difference. And they were, when the human says play, does the dog play? When the human says, hey, doggy, here's a tennis ball, go get it, does the dog go get it? Or a frisbee, or a tug toy. When the human says play, the dog has to play. And then the second thing was when the human is weary of playing and the human stands still or sits down, the dog has to come up to them. Those are the only two things that mattered. It doesn't matter. All these other things you could do just all disappeared. When we actually, nobody had done this before, because although it's very simple, it's a heck of a lot of work. It takes, you have all these hundreds of videos. And if you've ever tried going through a video frame by frame, making a note of every single thing that an animal does in a free environment, right? The dog could just run away or anything. It's
what
so
about
much.
when,
It takes
what
so
about,
much.
excuse me, when the dogs were, when the people were walking through, what kind of dogs were they attracted to? Because I know that you say the dogs they're very stressed in a shelter. It's an unusual environment. It's loud, it's noisy, it's smelly for them. So what is it that people what made them stop and say, I want to play with this dog. I want to see this dog. I want to test this dog, or pass by another dog?
So Holly, that's a great question. And we did that study too. So we had people walk up to the front of the kennel with a video camera, just as if they were a potential adopter. So we know already that people only look at a dog for a few seconds before deciding whether they might be interested or whether they're going to move on. So we took a 60-second video of each dog. That wasn't quite as straightforward because there was a whole bunch of behaviors, but it's quite easy to summarize them. And that is, if a dog is going to grab the interest of a person, the dog needs to take a polite, let's put it like this, a polite interest in that person. The dog that cowers at the back is not going to get the human's interest, but so too is the dog that lunges at the front of the kennel, at the gate, and barks and jumps up and down. People are put off by those dogs as well. The dogs that do best are the dogs that take a polite, civilized interest in this human visitor. They come to the front. It's not essential that they sit, but if they do something that shows, hey, I could be interested in you, we could be buddies. It's as I say, it's not as simple as the outside environment where it turned out only 2 behaviors came through, because it's a constellation of behaviors. There are a variety of different ways that a dog can say, hey, we could be friends. I'm not crazy and I'm not terrified. I'm a civilized individual. So yeah, it's something we looked at. Again, Sasha Protopopova did this research.
It's absolutely fascinating because, yes, it's my understanding this has never been done before. I've never heard of this before. And yet it is so simple and so needed because, I've worked and volunteered in rescue shelters all my life. And one of the things as a trainer that we work on is teaching dogs skills. And we're not just doing it so the dog looks really smart doing sit, stay, and come when called, but so that the dog becomes more adoptable, sellable. Because, your dog is coming prepackaged. It knows how to do this and it knows how to do that. But really, all we're just trying to say is, look, this dog could be a dog that knows how to show well.
Right.
As a person goes past.
Yeah. And I know, and this is fine. I know there are trainers who volunteer their time and train the dogs to do a great many things. Our research suggests that beyond a few basic things, it would be better to spread your time along more dogs and get a larger number of dogs to be civilized canine citizens than to go crazy training a smaller number of dogs to do a larger number of things. The great majority of the public are not looking for a dog who's a brilliant performing animal, right? They're not going to go on the stage. Officer Buckle, I love that. I love that children's book. They're not looking for a dog they're going to go on the stage with. They're just looking for a civilized and loving companion. And if we can help dogs, because it's in them, right? We're just helping them to show people that they have those qualities.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's basically for the dog that does leap up at the door. It's how are we going to work with that dog so that dog doesn't feel the need to leap up.
Right.
Because that dog is going to, in quotation marks, show better.
Yes.
So you're not creating Einstein. You're just creating this dog or helping this dog be more successful. But I think more needs to be done. And that's why I'm really looking forward to your talk, because I think that it's for everybody that works or volunteers in rescue and in shelters around the world. They need to hear this. This is vital.
Looking to take your dog training skills to the next level and turn your passion into a profession? Check out the Victoria Stilwell Academy for Dog Training and Behavior's professional courses and make your dream of working with animals for a living a reality. With courses ranging from free starter options to the popular Fundamentals course and even VSA's flagship Professional Dog Trainer course, there are options available for every skill level and every type of learner. Want to learn online at your own pace? All of VSA's courses are learner-centered, performance-based experiences designed using the latest concepts in the field of human adult learning to provide maximum efficiency and get you started quickly with a powerful tool set in your arsenal. Want a more customized learning experience? VSA's flagship dog trainer course also provides a premium add-on option which allows you to get the ultimate package. Connect with fellow students in a small private class that meets regularly for live private coaching and support-based meetups. Benefit from shadowing a local mentor in your area, and also attend multiple virtual and in-person learning intensives, obviously only when it's safe and practical to do so. Forget about watching another repurposed webinar or a recorded live event. All of VSA's content is fresh, new, and purpose-built to deliver an unparalleled learning experience. Plus, all dog trainer course students, whether online only or those also in the add-on in-person track, are provided with a dedicated faculty advisor to help mentor you through your course experience every step of the way. During these times of COVID, there are online course options springing up everywhere you turn. But VSA has been delivering its state-of-the-art learning content for years and leading the field with its commitment not just to giving you great material, but delivering it via a powerful learning system custom designed to help you learn and apply what you need to know to give you the skills, the knowledge, and the confidence to change the lives of people and dogs. So join the VSA family today and find out which path is right for you. Learn more and enroll in a free starter course today at vsdogtrainingacademy.com. That's vsdogtrainingacademy.com. Join us at the Victoria Stilwell Academy, the future of dog training.
I was going to ask, do you think, I know shelters struggle for money and it's not like, they can and build these dog hotels, but are there ways, especially if they do get some funding or there's a new shelter being built or things that they can do at no cost, how would you sort of redesign a shelter so that the dog has the least stressful, most favorable environment to get them adopted? Is it more, they're in their cages, they can sort of see each other, sort of, but they hear each other, they smell each other? Would it be better to have where they can all play together and see each other? What would you design if you could?
Well, Holly, that's another really great question, and I'm going to hold off a little bit giving you a direct answer, not because I mean to be evasive, but because the research is still ongoing. So, for example, there are a number of people who are convinced that if the dogs could just get out and play together more, that they would be better off. And we're studying that question at the moment, and I'm not at this point convinced that that is true. I think the dogs find, sure, dogs can have dog friends, and I'm sure all of our dogs have dog buddies, but they need to be able to choose their own friends. And just throwing a bunch of dogs together who happen to live together in a shelter, it's not clear that that actually helps them. As I say, it's early. I'm not making a definitive statement about that at this point. But I am very concerned about finding low-cost interventions. I think for those of us who have developed over the years some expertise in dog behavior, it can be too easy to propose solutions, which, okay, there are some very well-funded and beautifully set up shelters, but numerically, most of the dogs that are in shelters in the United States are in relatively impoverished municipal shelters, county-run facilities. Counties have a lot of demands on their money, and understandably, they don't put the animals at the top of their list. So I've always been interested in what can we do. And so again, to talk about, it seems to be the Sasha Protopopova show today, to talk about some of the wonderful research that Sasha did. Sasha found that if you have volunteers who are not behaviorally expert, is there anything you can do that the volunteers can be asked to do that would improve the dog's behavior? And a lot of shelters, if they have unskilled volunteers, they would encourage them to give the dogs extra exercise, which seems on the face of it like a good idea. Clearly, our dogs need exercise. But Sasha had a suspicion that if the dogs in the kennels had the experience that strangers who come up might very well be taking them off for exercise, then the dogs seem to get more and more razzed up by the appearance of strangers, which is then very unattractive to potential adopters. And so she did a study, a very simple study, where she had one group of volunteers take the dogs out for extra exercise, but the second group of volunteers, and as it happens, these were university students, right? They're the people we have easiest access to. They would just sit on an upturned bucket and read their textbook, which students are supposed to do. So we had one group of dogs who got the experience of, hey, a stranger comes, this could be the most exciting moment in my day. And another group of dogs, they got the experience, a stranger comes, this is going to be really pretty boring. And what we found was that actually the dogs that experienced a boring stranger tended to show better, more adoptable behaviors when strangers came up to their kennels afterwards. So I'm always interested in how can we help shelters who have nothing spare to spend. That's always a major priority for me. Another study I'm very proud of that Lisa Gunter worked on with me, we looked into the breed identifications that shelters put on their kennel cards. Now we know for a whole bunch of reasons, which, that people are scared. People in the public at large who are not experts on dogs have anxieties about dogs that they are told are pit bulls or might be pit bulls. And that's a whole topic for another day as to how that came about and so on. There's no need to be scared of pit bulls. And yet you write that on the card and it makes people anxious because they've heard things in the media. So we looked into two questions. One question is, well, how accurate is that? So it turns out that shelter staff, they make their best stab, but we were able to, Mars Veterinary, who make the, forgotten the name of it, the DNA test for your dog. They donated over 1,000 of these tests for our research, which was very kind of them. And so we were able to do a DNA test, a definitive assessment of what breeds these dogs are, and put it alongside the best guesses that the shelter staff were using to write the name of the breed on their card. And it turns out that with the exception of the really very small minority of dogs that are purebreds, most shelters don't have very many purebred dogs. When it comes to the mixed breed dogs, the shelter guesses are completely useless. I forget what the number was, but they're like less than 1 in 20. I mean, they're really hopeless. So, and yet, research also shows that people are very influenced by what they read on the cage card. People tend to naively assume that what it says on the cage card must have some basis in objective fact, when our research shows that they're really pretty hopeless guesses. So that then leads to the thought, well, why bother putting this information on cage cards at all if it's not reliable? And so we were able to show that shelters that take that information away and just let people look at the dog as an individual, they have actually considerably higher adoption. They get much higher adoption of the dogs that they would have otherwise labeled as pit bull. But interestingly, they actually get somewhat higher adoption all across the board, which I think is a very interesting finding. And so there's a proposal for a shelter where you can actually save effort, save money potentially, by just not bothering trying to guess what breed these dogs are. Let people get to know the individual, which I think is the absolutely crucial thing.
To be true, because Victoria knows I had a pit mix, a bully pit. And when I got her, they said, oh, she's Bulldog Lab. I was like, there's no lab in there. And they said that at the shelter, too, that they don't put pit bull in there because it scares people. So they'll put lab instead because their heads are big. It looks the same. They don't know the difference. Because I said, clearly she's a pit bull bulldog. And I mean, it was clear as day. And they went, well, but I would have adopted her anyway. But they told me we keep pit bull off of that because it does scare people away from these sweet dogs.
They're always putting Labrador. There's hardly any Labradors, and yet they're always putting something Labrador across. They're very keen on that. I mean, Labrador is just like if you ask a child to draw a dog, it looks a bit like a Labrador. Yeah. So if a dog looks like a dog, we'll call it a Labrador.
Yeah, exactly. It's generic. That's why Positive Trainers, we follow science, because we have incredible people like you doing this important research so that we can use it in our shelters for our training, and use it to build relationships with dogs. That is, we're discovering all the time. And as a trainer, I never say I know it all, and no trainer should ever say they know it all. But we have such fun discovering, and that's why this research is really, really important. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask Clive about the other work that he does with wolves. Stay tuned. Okay, we are back. And Clive, yes, well, we talked a lot about shelters, and I'm very excited to hear your presentation in April at the Dog Behavior Conference. But I now want to talk to you and pivot a little bit, to talk to you that you're about the fact that you're a director of research at Wolf Park in Indiana, a place I've always wanted to go to.
I want to go too, Vic. Road trip. As soon as
we're going to go together.
Put it on the top.
Road trip. I'll see you there.
Do you think, can we do that? Do you think CNN would do like a little a story about it?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be great.
Let's do it.
Clive, could you tell us a little bit about Wolf Park in Indiana and about the work that you do there?
Sure. So Wolf Park was founded a long time ago, 1974, by Eric Klinghammer, the late Eric Klinghammer, who was a professor at Purdue University. So it's 5 miles outside West Lafayette, where Purdue University is located, which is to say it's sort of roughly halfway between Indianapolis and Chicago. And Eric was an expert in imprinting, which is the process by which young animals, basically they learn who they are. No animal is born knowing what species it belongs to. We all have to figure that out, and that is the process of imprinting, which takes place very early in life. We live easily with dogs because they're very easy to imprint onto people. We don't tend to live with wolves or even smaller wild animals like squirrels because it's difficult to imprint wild animals. And so Eric founded this facility with wolves in it that he raised from when they were small pups so that they would imprint onto human beings. So that has been Wolf Park's tradition ever since. All of their wolves were raised by human caretakers. All of their wolves, they know they're wolves because they also live alongside their siblings and they get to know other wolves as they grow up. But they are living with people from the earliest possible age. And so they're wolves, yes, and they're very different from dogs, but they are wolves who have rich relationships with people. And some of them are so happy around people that you can go in and you can pet the wolves. And it's, if you've never had that experience, it is a very, I always feel very honored that the wolves let me go in and interact with them. It feels almost like a religious experience. It feels like a great honor. And the wonderful thing then is that if you have these wolves that accept humans as social companions, well then you can carry out on them the kinds of simple behavioral tests that are carried out on dogs. And you have a wonderful situation to get a clear sense of the similarities and differences between wolves and dogs. So that's the Wolf Park story in a nutshell.
I have never been to, as I said, Wolf Park, Indiana, but I have been to a similar place in Shropshire in England. And this is the enclosures are massive, huge woods. I mean, you have to walk a long way. But there is a family of wolves in one, a true pack in one, a part of the one enclosure. As I said, these enclosures are acres big. But there's another one where there was just a couple of wolves. And I remember him saying to me, the gentleman that I was with who ran the place, is that she's going to come up to you and she'll jump on you. Most likely, she does to most strangers. She's going to put her front paws on your shoulders and she's going to look you in the eye.
Why?
Look at her back. Don't avert your gaze. Look at her back. Now, this goes totally against what I have been taught, what I do when I first meet dogs, even freaks, and dogs that maybe are anxious or fearful. But true to form, it happened. I have to say that when she went on her hind legs and she put her paws on my shoulders, her head was way above mine. I felt like I was a gnat. I felt like I was just a mosquito. I felt two inches small. It was terrifying.
What was she doing?
She looked at me and I looked at her. She got off and she started walking with us. I guess I was accepted. I've never been so terrified in my life.
Right, because what if she decided she didn't like you?
Hello, I don't know. We never got there, thank goodness.
So why is there a difference, like, from wolves and dogs? Because from what I understand, and maybe I'm wrong, are dogs descendants of wolves or related? But there seem to be so behaviorally different.
They are different. They are. But Clive, because we need to speak about this because obviously our dogs are not socialized wolves. But what was going on there, Clive? I've never really got to the bottom of that. Well, except to say I was terrified.
Well, I've had the exact same experience, Victoria. I mention it in my book, Dog is Love, and there's a photograph of me that I love because there you go. So
this is the book.
That's the book. Thank you. I should have had a copy handy as well. I've given away all the spares I had. There's a photograph of me that I love because it brings it back to me with that wolf, with his paws on my shoulders. And I've still got my hands in my pockets because the wolf bounded over, so it was cold, and I had my hands in my pockets, and the wolf bounded over so quickly I didn't even get my hands out of my pockets. So if the wolf had any other intentions, but in fact he just licked me on my cheeks. He just liked me. I mean, Victoria, you know how it is. We cannot explain in any species, in our own species or any other, we cannot explain why an individual does a particular thing in a particular moment. I mean, this bounding over, and I mean, this wolf was greeting me and was greeting me in a warm and friendly manner. Why he felt warmly towards me in that moment, I don't know. I mean, he didn't know me. I mean, it's as well.
It's a little disconcerting, but they are massive.
Oh yeah.
These I always say, look, just you don't really understand the power of the wolf or how big they are, or how big their faces are, their noses are, their teeth are, until you've been face to face with one.
It's very visceral.
How similar are wolves and dogs?
Right. Well, so Holly, you tried to start that question already.
She did. I'm sorry.
And of course it's the crux question about the origin of dogs. All of our dogs, no matter your tiny Chihuahua or whatever, they're all descended from wolves and only from wolves, right? All of them. And it's not that long ago. I mean, there's a lot of controversy about this. I'm on the more shorter side. I would say 15 to 20,000 years ago. There are people who say 30,000 years ago. The truth is, that's a fight in a teacup, right? That's a fight over nothing, because whether it's 15,000 years or 35,000 years, in evolutionary terms, that's nothing, right? Evolution is usually about millions of years, not a few thousand here or there. So on the one hand, the time span is tiny, and of course the animals look similar, although wolves are generally bigger than dogs. They have the same broad shape, and yet behaviorally, they are clearly very different. And there's a lot of room for argument about what is the crux nature of that difference. There are people I disagree with who think that dogs have evolved special forms of intelligence. An argument perhaps for another day. I don't believe that's the case. I think that the crux change from wolf to dog is in this ability to form strong emotional bonds with members of other species. That is to say, dogs are very, very ready. They come prepared to form loving bonds with other species, primarily with us. That's where we usually see it. We're humans. We see them forming loving bonds with humans. But if you put your puppy in the goat barn, then your dog grows up loving goats. And, you know, it's not essentially about us. It can be about any other species. Okay, you can hand rear a wolf so that it will form social bonds with people. But my goodness, it takes a lot of work. And when we go to Wolf Park together, we must get the old timers to take their clothes off and show us their scars. Because back in the 1970s, when they started doing this, by their own admission, they weren't quite as good at it as they quickly became. And the old timers have the scars to show for it, because it's very difficult to raise wild animals to accept human beings as social companions. It's not natural. It's not natural. I mean, we tell our kids these stories, you know, Bambi and all these stories about how all the animals in the forest are friends. But I'm sorry, that's not really what happens. The animals in the forest are all out to kill or be killed, right? And if that's how nature really works, you cannot afford to have your offspring making friends with other species. They'll either get killed by those other species, or they will be inhibited and not want to kill in their turn. And so they'll starve. So nature doesn't want species making friends with other species. Our dogs and other domesticated animals are strange in that respect.
So then how did wolves, or how does a wolf turn into a dog? And there are a number of theories about this, and I know that the ones that I sort of subscribe to, but how did that happen?
Well, right. That is a question that is becoming clearer. I think I'm on the side of what some people call self-domestication. I think the original phase was not something that our ancestors actively sought or actively involved themselves in. I think our ancestors did what I'm afraid human beings have always done and probably will always do, and that is they created mounds of trash, mounds of rubbish, or what archaeologists call, when they find them from thousands of years ago, they call them middens. And wherever you are in the world, animals try and get at the leftovers of humankind. In first world countries, we don't see it very obviously because we invest effort in keeping the animals out. We put up high fences and we have people, animal control, who make sure that we don't have lots of big wild animals. But there are still rats and seagulls and things like that. You go into the third world, and of course, their trash dumps are covered with animals. So I think that, and in parts of the world where wolves still exist, wolves do come to the trash dumps. When I went to Israel to try and see the wolf of the Middle East, which we call the Arab wolf, where did they take me to see them? They took me to the rubbish dumps. That's where you would expect to find them. You see them in Alaska, you see them in Scandinavia. And I think as certain, call them tribes, certain tribes of wolves, certain groups, ecotypes would be the technical term, start to become specialists on the human trash, so they start to evolve. They start to evolve to do better on the trash dump. And that involves a number of things. That involves maybe not being quite so big and fierce, because you don't really need to be big and fierce to eat the rubbish that's on the trash dump. And it also involves, there would be an advantage to you if you didn't mind human beings. In parts of the world where wolves scavenge on trash dumps, the wolves don't get an awful lot, because it sounds contradictory, but the wolves are very scared of people and they'll run away when they detect humans anywhere in the neighborhood. Whereas in parts of the world like India or Mexico, where dogs scavenge on trash dumps, you can't get as close to those dogs as you get to your own dog, of course, because they are a little bit anxious of what people might do to them, and with good reason. But you can get certainly within 20 feet, maybe within 10 feet of the dogs that are scavenging on the trash dump. This is something that changed in the nature of the dog. And actually, with quite a few of them, you might well be able to get right up close to them. Maybe you could pet them. And, in time, if you wanted to, you could develop a relationship with that dog. And certainly its puppies would happily follow you home.
And that's how it happened.
Yeah.
I'm curious about, I've seen people who say they have hybrid dog wolf. Is this really a hybrid, and how does that happen? And do they, obviously they would be more domesticated like dogs, but could they have sort of that wild feature as a wolf does, even if you bring it into the house? Talk about those hybrids.
Sure, Holly. Well, so in the United States, there are more wolf dog hybrids than there are purebred wolves. I forget the exact numbers. And of course, there's no real census, but there are believed to be tens of thousands of wolf dog hybrids in the United States. Wolves and dogs, biologists tell us they don't really qualify as distinct species. They're just subspecies of each other, and they can still interbreed, and their offspring are fertile. The problem with wolf dogs is that you never really know how wolfy they're going to be and how doggy they're going to be. And so they tend to, there are exceptions and there's a wide range, but they tend to be somewhat unpredictable. And that means that they tend to be somewhat dangerous. Bite statistics in the United States are not very reliable because we do not have uniform licensing of dogs. So we don't really know how many dogs of different breeds exist in the United States. So dog bite statistics are not all that useful, but it is interesting that when you look at those kinds of statistics, wolf dog hybrids, if listed as a breed of dog, tend to be towards the top of the bite statistics tables. So they clearly are among the more dangerous kinds of animals to have. And I know that there can be a certain kind of macho appeal to the idea of being able to say, I haven't just got a dog. Anybody could have a dog. I've got a wolf dog, or heaven forbid, a pet wolf. But the reality is that over the thousands of years, dogs have grown to suit us. They suit us so well. So let's go with the model that's really well suited. It might seem like an attractive macho idea to not have a car. Everybody has a car. I'm going to have a tank, because I'm a real man and this is a much more stronger thing to have. But, a tank, it's a heck of a lot more difficult to get parking for a tank. And they use a lot of gas or diesel or whatever they run on. We're better off. We're all better off with dogs.
Yeah. And I have worked with one wolf dog hybrid before. She was very, very tall again. She did have a lot of, I think she was more wolf than she was dog, but she was incredibly sensitive. Incredibly sound sensitive, incredibly you had to be very careful around her, and she did not like strangers. Took a long time to get her to trust. But it was a fascinating experience to work with her. And I know there are people there that are real wolf dog hybrid advocates, but I'm not one of them, and I don't think people should be having that, but or should be breeding them or having them. But again, I'm probably going to get a lot of emails or a lot of comments on my social media.
There's so many dogs that need to be rescued. Why are we creating something? Come on.
Exactly. So this is, again, Clive, we could talk to you for forever. We've come to the end of this podcast. If you want to hear more of Clive Wynne, then you have to register for the Dog Behavior Conference. It is virtual again this year. There's 3 days instead of 2, April the 16th to the 18th. We have some amazing speakers, including Clive. But, if you are at all, you work or you volunteer in shelters or you work in rescue, then you need to hear Clive speak about how we can make life better in our rescue shelters for these dogs that end up there, and also how we can get them adopted. What can we do to help them? Clive, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Holly, of course,
Thank you.
As always. I mean, it's always enlightening when we're together, but also when we have one of our guests come on. Truly.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Clive. It was so great to you're such a bevy of information, and I love that your passion for rescue like ours. I mean, I just love it. Thank you. So nice to meet you. What an honor.
And
well, thank you both. I had a lot of fun.
True. Please be safe.
Yeah,
and we will talk to you soon. That's it for this week, listeners. And please be safe. We will be back with you next week. Take care.
See you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Victoria Stilwell's Positively podcast. For more information, visit positively.com. Get connected on Facebook and YouTube as Victoria Stilwell, or follow her on Twitter @VictoriaS. Be sure to tune in next time as Victoria helps to change dogs' lives positively.